the Murdoch Webster Technology Group, and I'm really excited to be here today to present our October Hear from an Expert. This is something we do each month where we invite some of our friends in the business, our experts in specific fields, to come in and educate and chat with everyone around what they're seeing on a particular topic. So today we're very excited to have Wasim joining us and Shelley from Illumio. And we've also got Michael Hague, who's from Murdoch Webster. And today we're talking about the importance of zero trust and micro-segmentation. So by way of introduction, Wasim's come all the way from Israel, especially for today. No, not really. He's been in Australia for quite a while. He's had 10 years experience in IT, focusing on architecting and consulting on security solutions for small and large organisations. He also enjoys more recently a mission critical systems focus in complex distributed environments. My God, I should have practiced that, Wasim. That was a bit of a mouthful. Also on the call today, you've got our friendly Michael Hague, who is our resident expert. Michael Hague has over 25 years experience, and we're not allowed to question how old he is. And he's currently joined Murdoch Webster as our principal consultant, and he also runs our Centre of Excellence. So what that means is when there's new technologies coming to market out of the US or even within Australia, it's Mick's job to play with it, break it, test it, pull it apart, put it back together, and see if it's something that our customers would like to benefit from in the networking and security space. He also loves playing with new technology, and most recently has been deep diving into zero trust and micro-segmentation with us. So Shelley, without further ado, I might hand over to you and Wasim to kick off your demonstration.
Cool. Thank you very much. My name is Shel Debon. I'm part of the mid-market team here at Illumio. I've been with the company now for about 3 years, and also had Wasim on the call, and excited to be presenting Illumio to you. So what is Illumio? Illumio is simply a security orchestration tool that we can give you real-time visibility with consistent security across your entire environment. So we've been recognized as the leader in zero trust by Forrester, and Gartner you may be more familiar with Gartner's workload identity. Wasim will go into a little bit more detail into how Illumio works, but I want you to keep in mind 2 things of how we can help you. The first thing that we do is provide you with a live logical map of your entire environment. So that gives you context into how your assets are talking and also their their dependencies. And we do this in real time. The second thing that we do is allow you to apply quick and easy policy to ring-fence your high-value assets to stop the lateral movement of ransomware within your environment. And we can do this absolutely anywhere. So that means containers, cloud, multi-clouds, on-prem, bare metal, absolutely anywhere. So we work with all customers with all different sizes. So we can work from very small down to your large global enterprise customers. So one of the use cases that we work with is an Australian Catholic college, and they had concerns with their ability to be able to protect student data. So over the course of the school holidays, Illumio was able to come in and visualize their entire environment and start to isolate their core student applications. So that means now that their student data is protected against the likes of ransomware. So I'll hand over to Wasim now, but feel free to jump in at any point to ask any questions or any concerns that you might have. And at the end of the presentation, I've got a nice little structured service offering that I wanted to talk to you about as well.
Over to you, Wasim. I think you're on mute, darling.
Of course I am.
It's the call of the century.
Yeah. Thanks, Shel. Thanks, Leanne, for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We're going to talk today about risk-based visibility, ransomware containment, and how it relates to zero trust. So what I thought I would start with, actually, you probably hear about zero trust a lot from every second person around. So I wanted to make sure that we have the understanding that zero trust is actually a framework. It's not a product. It's not something one thing that you can do and you have zero trust. So zero trust is a framework that includes taking care of your network, workloads, people, data, and rounding all of that with automation and analytics. What we're going to focus on today is how can you prevent the lateral threat movement using within your infrastructure using market segmentation. And this is the focus of today, which part of Zero Trust we're talking about. To that extent, Illumio is actually recognized as the definitive leader in Zero Trust reports. This one is by Forrester. We're happy to share that after this call, along with other documentation that we intend to share. We got to that stage where we are the definitive leader through a lot of work that we've done with our customers in the past years. And we've achieved a lot of success that I'm going to touch on in case studies at the end of this presentation. Now, why Zero Trust is important? Let's take a step back and think about infrastructure that people have in their environments. That infrastructure has evolved over time. It evolved based on the years the business has been running. It evolved based on mergers and acquisitions, divestitures that happened, as well as changes in the environment when we, for example, in the past 18 months, we've been working from home. So remote users became a big thing. On top of these, a lot of businesses are looking to improve their effectiveness of delivering their business applications through integrations with cloud, with SaaS offerings, while automating some of these deliveries. So this is one side of the story. The other side is that there are a lot of attackers, if they are state-sponsored, if they are malicious users that would like to gain some financial gain. Combining that long history of IT development along with the changes that happened lately dissolved the perimeter. The perimeter is hard to define anymore. On top of that, there are attackers that are trying to get to the environments, which meant that there is a lot of stress onto these environments to adopt actual Zero Trust. Out of curiosity, you can do it by raising hand through the platform, through Teams. Did you experience that kind of evolvement of the IT infrastructure and the pressures that you're getting from ransomware around? And are you considering going to Zero Trust type of model? Any questions about? Thanks, Matthew. Any questions about like why we're talking about that? So the other thing, and Mick, feel free also to jump in and give us some of your experience as well, and if you have questions as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'll just mention, I mean, for several years, Murdoch Webster has helped all of you look after perimeter security on your firewalls. And they've done a great job of that, providing visibility of traffic through the firewalls and securing the zones, I guess, through the firewalls. One of the things that firewalls have never been able to do is give you good visibility about what's going on inside a zone, because they simply don't see the traffic a lot of the time. And so that's one of the places where a lot of these, where a microsegmentation product really starts to come into a zone, because you can get the visibility of what's going on inside those zones, and also start to look at securing some of the traffic within a traditional firewall zone without having to go through the pain of re-architecting your network.
Yeah, this is actually a great point about making sure that you don't need to actually change your network to achieve parts of the Zero Trust framework. So some of the questions that has been raised in different forums is, why do I need to actually worry about lateral threat movement if I already have a firewall, I already have an EDR in place, I already have a NAC in place? Why do I need to worry about this? So if we take a look on some scenarios that could happen, one of them is a user that gets into the network, gets authorized by the NAC, and after they moved into the network, they're actually clicking the wrong link. From that moment, it could be a new strain of malware, for example, or a threat actor that gained access to that device. And this is a repetitive process that happens with a lot of ransomware attacks, where it starts with that infection. What happens next are three distinct problems. If the EDR cannot detect that, and it's a new strain, and this is the first problem that happens when an EDR cannot detect a new strain or a threat active on the device. Lateral threat movement happens between the different laptops, desktops that are on the network, including ones that are connected through VPN. That lateral threat movement is quite important to gain access to a device that would enable the attacker to actually move laterally to the more important stuff, which is your data center workloads. And data center could be on-prem, public cloud, any of the, or a combination of both. Notice that we're still behind the perimeter firewall in this case, and we're talking about east-west kind of traffic. The second thing that would happen as well is there are websites that are exposed to the internet. The perimeter firewall is doing its job, but the problem starts when a detection fails and someone gets across that hard shell that you have in place. And from that moment, they can move laterally within the environment. So what's actually missing here is control over that lateral threat movement. Secondly, the visibility into that movement and who's talking to who. Thirdly, is actually measurement of the risk that you have in place today in regards to a blast radius. And what we noticed is that Zero Trust is actually encouraging you to move to a new approach. New security kind of mindset where you need to assume breach. You cannot assume that if you're behind a firewall and you have an EDR, a breach will not happen. All the detection that you have in place is doing its job, but the problem starts when a detection fails. And when a detection fails, an attacker will get a foothold through malware that could be going for months before detection, and then perform the ransomware attack. So in order to address that, you would need to assume breach. You need to make sure that you have containment strategies, and we will talk about it later in the presentation, to contain threat when it happens instead of shutting down all of your services. And thirdly, be prepared to separate your environment and separate your environment in advance through microsegmentation to prevent that lateral threat movement. And these are the things that we address at Illumio. We address them in an innovative way. We start with building a map. This map would give you the ability to see who talks to who in a context of the applications and how they're doing these communications. So it enables you actually to assess your risk first place. After you assess your risk, you put in place the ability to actually shut down common ports or common services that ransomware and malware moves around through. And thirdly, of course, separate your environment, do microsegmentation, and isolate your crown jewels to prepare for the attack when it happens, and it will happen eventually. If we take a look on the same scenario that we had before, and see how Illumio applies on that scenario and how it solves these three problems. If we start with the user that gets into the network, gets authorized by the NAC, and gets infected without any detection by the EDR, through Illumio, we would be able to basically separate the laptops from each other, right? So preventing peer-to-peer communications, even if these laptops or desktops are on the same network. So this is the first problem, to getting foothold by an attacker. The second one is the accessibility from that device into any other applications that you have inside your network. So basically controlling based on identity who talks to who to these applications. Thirdly, of course, building microperimeters around all of these applications to prevent the lateral threat movement, even if the infection comes from the outside. So you're basically protecting your crown jewels from lateral threat movement. So what you're getting here is the control and the microsegmentation to prevent the lateral threat movement. You're getting the visibility of who talks to who and how they talk to each other within your environment. And thirdly, we give you the measurement of your risk. What is your current risk and how you're progressing with that, with your policies and your patching regime in reducing your risks.
So Wasim, can you explain a little more about how workloads in the data center are identified so that when we're looking at the visibility map, we understand which application they're part of and how they, or which role they perform within the application?
Yeah, so what we do at Illumio, we utilize labeling strategies that comply with 4 dimensions. And there is a reason why we're using 4 dimensions. The 4 dimensions are the role of any workload, to which business application it belongs, which environment it operates in, and what its location. And the reason for using these labels is to enable you to see things in your environment in the context of what is the function a workload is doing, which business app they're serving, and which environment they're running, and what is their location. The idea here is that you are starting to identify your workloads with an identity that is context-based rather than network construct-based. So you don't need to understand the IP addresses and translate that in your mind into which application it belongs to. We're giving the workloads an identity, a new identity that a network engineer, a security engineer, a business analyst, a CIO, all of them see the same thing and understand it.
Thanks for saying.
The next thing you're probably thinking about, well, we actually can do these things. We can do segmentation with firewalls. The question is, why haven't we done that so far? Firewalls have been there for over 20 years now. Systems that do segmentation have been there for years and years, like SDNs. Why we don't see environments micro-segmented today? It's simply difficult. It's really difficult. And the amount of effort organizations need to put in place to utilize a traditional method of doing segmentation is too hard. It's too hard because there is no visibility. And we will see the visibility in the demo shortly. The lack of visibility means you are guessing what are the things that are talking to each other. You might be looking at pickup captures or any other flow analysis, but it's not giving you the context of the visibility and the confidence that what you are separating is not going to break anything. So that's the first hurdle a lot of our customers started with, and with traditional kind of methods to try to do the segmentations. And they stopped there because they didn't have the confidence of the visibility they have. Some went a step further and faced the complexity of creating rules to be able to do the micro-segmentation based on network constructs like IP addresses or contracts. That complexity meant not only it's hard to create the policies first place, we need to think about day two. What happens in day two when you would like to be able to make changes to your environment? If your environment even slightly dynamic, it would mean that each time you want to change anything, you need to go figure out out of all the firewall rules, what you need to change in order to maintain your security posture. A lot of these solutions are actually perimeter centric, which means you actually need to go change your network in order to achieve the result. You need to hairpin a control point in the network to be able to do that, which means you need to build a solution that is network dependent, that is dependent on the current network that you have, that does not account for the future or any changes in your network. Where a lot of customers end up, and this is where we are today, is permit and pray. We have firewalls that are east-west positioned, but they are not doing a lot of, they are too permissive for the traffic that is going through. Out of curiosity, go ahead, Mick, you wanted to say something, I think.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so if we've applied microsegmentation policy to workloads in our data center and we start looking at trying to migrate those into a cloud environment, how does this work in the cloud?
Yeah, so for public cloud, I think if we go one step back, when I mentioned that we're giving identity to these workloads, this identity relies on the context of these workloads, which is what function they're doing, which application they belong to, what environment they belong to, and the location. Really, from that context, what changes? The intent behind separation of a specific application didn't change. If you had a web server in application A allowed only to communicate with a processing server in application A in production, that intent didn't change if you moved the workload to the public cloud, if you just lift and shift that workload. Which meant that you don't really need to change your policies. Your policies are there. And the platform that we're gonna talk about today is actually an adaptive security platform, which allows you to continue rely on a security that is adaptive, and you don't need to manually go change things. And this is a big thing for day 2 operations, where the operational overhead of a solution is not going to be more expensive than just paying the ransom. Out of curiosity, not necessarily with the current, with your current job, through your career, did you try to do a granular segmentation? And does these points actually, do you relate to any of them? Have you faced that before in some environments? And either by raising hand or by just, you can go and unmute yourself and share some of the details that you're happy to share. No pressure. That's fine. From if I look at the presentations that I usually do, I would say around between 40 to 50% of the people that we present to have faced at least 3 of these problems when they try to do segmentation. Hence the question. It's we'll go ahead with the other slides. These problems are not a problem that you can add a feature to firewall. That problem is because the security segmentation and the network are deeply coupled. So changes, you build your security segmentation based on how the network is working. And if you change the network, you need to figure out how to change your security. So security segmentation. And what we do at Illumio, we basically decouple these. We are an overlay over what the network is doing. And the network can continue change. And the network also, even if you move the platform to next question to public cloud, you would stay in the same position. Of course, you're probably thinking about PaaS services in the public cloud. I'll touch on that in the next slides. Now, practically, what we expect people to do to achieve zero trust in weeks. First step in zero trust in weeks. There are a few things that Illumio can offer, and you can achieve that in weeks, not months or years. You start with the visibility that we've mentioned, being able to assess your risk, being able to understand what are the operational insights into how can you use the system. Thirdly, in many cases, you actually, it wasn't one time that during other POCs or normal operations, we discovered things like there is still an agent running on all servers trying to connect to a decommissioned platform or system, but there's still that connectivity is still open, it's still done. So these kind of hygiene insights into the environment is quite important to assess your risk, as well as understanding your vulnerabilities and where what is the blast strategies within the environment. Secondly, there are risky things that we start with, which is blocking the ports that are we deem risky, and we can discuss these with customers usually, but we encourage to think about that. Building access control that goes through specific VDIs or specific jump hosts that are identity based. So different users would have different network access based on their identity. Thirdly, we would want you to prepare for when an infection happens. And it will happen. So we want you to enable quarantine policies to be in place where you can drag and drop workloads into a quarantine policy instead of shutting down all of your systems and having larger or longer downtime. Basically, anything that is infected moves to quarantine to be able to be examined while disconnecting that from the rest of the network. And of course, the ability to track attacker communications, and these policies also involve integrations with the SOC to be able to track these. Thirdly, of course, ring fence, microsegment your environments for the various reasons that you need to do that. If it's to protect your high value assets, is it to satisfy regulators and auditors that you have? Is it to be able to migrate workload in confidence, where you still have the same segmentation policies from on-prem to public cloud, or operate through environments that are diverse, where you are able to segment workloads and build the microperimeter around them, regardless if a specific business application is spread across few platforms or few networks. And of course, being able to access and control based on user identity, which users are allowed access to which applications. Any questions before I move to the architecture, and then we'll go through a demo?
So I guess the question's probably a little early, we're saying. We'll maybe need to talk about the architecture piece first, but let's talk about how we detect the identity of a user. So are we doing Active Directory scraping like it happens on a lot of the firewalls, or how does that work?
So for the users and the identity, we actually use the security group they belong to, so integration with AD. And this is how we are able to basically, whenever a user log in, we will be able to identify which security group they belong to, and based on that, on the fly, create the policies that would restrict their access to the specific applications they are explicitly allowed to access.
And when this is operating in a VDI type environment where it's a multi-user platform, how do we differentiate different users and their processes on those platforms?
Yeah, so utilizing the Windows filtering platform would mean that we would be able to differentiate between the different users. And actually, part of the demos that we do, we actually have the same two different users accessing the same device and getting two different permissions to access different applications.
Great, thanks for saying.
No worries.
Should we head into the demo, Wasim?
Yeah, we'll head to the demo just when we finish this slide. The architecture is simple. We have two pieces of software. One piece of software we install on the compute, or we consume flows or flow logs from the public clouds for past services. That context and telemetry allows us to build that connectivity map, where we apply metadata on, which is the 4 dimensions I mentioned, the role, the application, the environment, and location. From that moment, you see what we will see very shortly in a map. You see that in a full map that gives you the context of who's talking to who, and the ability to actually create the policies based on these 4 dimensions. The moment you create the policies, these 4 dimensions, the policy compute engine in the middle, which is our most important piece of software actually, it calculates what are the rules that would achieve the policy you've described, pushes that down into the virtual enforcement node, which orchestrates the native OS stateful firewalls to be able to achieve your policy. Now, if anything, IP address changes, workload moves, any changes in your network happen, the context and telemetry gets to the policy compute engine, and the policy compute engine automatically recalculates what needs to change to maintain your policy. So adaptive security rather than static security. And of course, if there's an interest after this presentation, we're happy into going for further details and technical details on the architecture individually with each one of you, of course. In terms of our current customers in Australia, we will share these after this presentation. One of them is QBEs, that is publicly referenceable, and we have a case study with them. We have XM as well, that is publicly referenceable. Stowe as well, which is Australian customer, as well as Investa. Other non-publicly available, as a reference yet, we have an Australian Catholic college as well that utilizes Illumio, and notice that our customers vary between users or customers that have 60 servers to 10,000 servers, right? Same thing with City Council and Healthcare University in the USA. Any questions before we move to the demo? And we will share these after this call, of course.
I'm hoping we're getting lots of questions ready for the end, guys. I might start naming people. Let's see if the demo gods are in our favour today, Wasim.
They sure are. It's a recorded demo.
I love you.
Yeah, let's share the recorded demo. And of course, if there is interest afterwards, we're happy to do the same demo afterwards for each one of you guys. And let me know if you didn't see it.
Hey everyone, my name is Neil.
Now we can't hear it, Wasim. Maybe you can't go on mute.
To cloud, to containers. Everything starts with what we're looking at here, our real-time application dependency map. We call this illumination. What you see right now is a holistic view of your entire data center, whether it's public cloud like AWS and Azure, or private cloud like physical data centers in San Jose or Sydney, even containers, everything in one location. From here, you can get even more precise. Let's say we drill down into one of these locations like California. You'll see every single application inside this data center. We can even see the number of workloads within this application and how they communicate with each other. Each one of these bubbles indicates individual applications. The number inside the bubble is the number of workloads that make up that application. And the lines between bubbles are essentially communications and dependencies between these applications. This helps you easily understand exactly what's happening in your environment. If we dive deeper into a single application, we'll see every workflow inside this application. Here you can see red and green lines. This is essentially telling you whether or not there's policy written for that traffic. This kind of visibility gives you the power to very easily detect and understand potential policy violations and unauthorized traffic. Now, you'll notice that this application is not just in one data center. If we expand it out, we can see the second data center. You see that the application is also located in New York, and you can very easily understand what that distribution looks like. One application here in California serving the West region, the other part of the application in New York serving the East region. This could also serve as disaster recovery or redundancy. It's just a very powerful view from an operational perspective. Now that you can see everything about the application, you can actually use this flow data to create effective segmentation policy. Illumio makes it very easy to actually combine the single application into a single view so that when you're writing policy, it's uniform, agnostic of the location. I'm going to go ahead and move into Policy Generator for this application to show you how. This is Policy Generator. It enables you to quickly create policy by selecting the level of granularity you need. You see we have a couple options. The first here is an application ring fence, essentially bubbling that application out from the rest of the environment. The next is a tier level segmentation, which gives you a little bit more precise segmentation between the tiers of your application. And then finally, a very fine-grained process-based micro-segmentation. This is giving you the most control over the workloads inside your application. Once you're comfortable with the level of granularity, you can move to the final screen, which will give you a summary of the policy that you're going to put into effect. You'll notice this policy is very easy to understand. It's written using natural language, so we can see consumer and provider labels. And this makes sure that not only is the policy easy to read, but it's also very dynamic as it doesn't rely on the IP addressing or the network construct. Once you've written policy, Illumio gives you the ability to model and test this to ensure that it's very precise. These are three distinct modes. We have build mode, which you see here, which is essentially going to overlay the policy on the flows. Test mode is going to give you a more precise understanding of any flows that potentially violate your policy without actually dropping the traffic and breaking the application. And then finally, enforcement will lock down the application, only permit the flows you have defined as per policy, and protect it in the way you designed it. And that's it. Visibility and segmentation that gives you the control needed to prevent lateral movement, and at the end of the day, greatly reducing the organization's cyber risk. Thanks for watching. To learn more, please check out illumio.com.